Joining me today on the Capital Show, Mr. Norman Roule. He's a former senior U.S. intelligence officer and a senior advisor to United Against a Nuclear Iran. You are most welcome, Mr. Roule. My subject for today is about Sudan, how Iran is interfering in Sudan and how they are providing the Sudanese army with with drones, which is called Mujahid 6. Can you explain what these drones can do and what is the target of Iran by such an action?
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for raising such an important issue. Traditionally, Iran uses its weapon cells in Africa to build not only diplomatic relationships, but to build an environment where it can operate Quds Force and other terrorist training camps. So in the past, when Iran had a relationship with Sudan, it used that to hold meetings with Palestinian militants and to smuggle missiles and other weaponry to Hamas through the Sudanese-Egyptian border. So in the long term, Iran's goal is sufficient influence to enable it to conduct Quds Force operations against the Gulf states as well as against other African states. Iran does export its weapons for financial purposes as well, but the Sudanese government is not a very wealthy actor. These drones are terrifically advanced and they're armed as drones go in that environment, and they will be lethal.
Mhm. Why why Iran now is acting and rushing to aid this army? What is the importance of Sudan in this time where there is war in Gaza and Sudan? We know it's very near to the Red Sea, and is it related to the Houthi attacks at the same time? What is the strategy Iran is trying to do now?
In essence, Iran sees an opportunity because the world is focused on Gaza. The Red Sea is critical for Iran's power projection, and it sees Somalia, operations in Sudan, as well as being critical to being able to transship weapons, not only to support the Houthis, but to threaten Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries.
Do you think that Sudan will turn into a base, military base, for Iran, just like they have the Houthis in Yemen, they have Hezbollah in Lebanon, etc., Iraq and Syria? How al-Burhan, the head of the army, is facilitating this target or this job?
Well, I don't think Iran was going to be able to turn Sudan into something resembling Yemen or Lebanese Hezbollah exactly. But as you correctly have put in your questions, that's not necessarily critical for Iran. What is critical for Iran is that it has a relationship that allows it to put a Quds Force presence in country that can do a variety of regional aggression. So it's seeking a relationship that gives it a certain amount of capacity. For Burhan, he's looking for a partner who will provide weapons and weapons that will allow him to shift the conflict. I think a danger is not only in the drones that Iran has provided the Sudanese, also the obviously the Russians, and there have been reports to Ethiopians. But we should be careful this doesn't turn into a ballistic missile arrangement where Iran might try to send missiles to the Sudanese government because that further expands its capacity for the Revolutionary Guard influence in that country.
Do you think that this alliance between al-Burhan and Iran will threat also Egypt national security?
Certainly. And indeed, the previous connections between Iran and Sudan were used to ship missiles and weapons to a variety of militants through the Egyptian border into the Sinai to Gaza, but also to support Iran's operations to destabilize the region as a whole. And Iran, of course, wishes to destabilize Egypt.
Is there any will the tourism or the project or the Vision 2030 of the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman will be affected by this action? Or I mean, what is the fate of NEOM and Saudi tourism project when we have this complication in the region, especially in Sudan, which is near?
That's a very important and very smart question. If you look at a map of the Red Sea, you will see that it's a relatively narrow body. So as your viewers are considering this, they've got to keep in mind that the Saudis are going to be putting about $500 billion of investment on their coast. And by the way, that investment also comes with the support of the United Arab Emirates and some other actors who are bringing investment into that area. Now imagine on the other side of that shallow waterway, you have not only instability, but you have Iranian terrorists and you have weapons smugglers who could come in and conduct terrorist activities. This is a tremendous problem. I should say that Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have undertaken considerable efforts to build development programs in Africa to introduce stability and to tie the region together. And the United States has talked to them about this. We just need to do a lot more to keep this going.
Mhm. We can see that Iran is rushing to help and aid the Muslim Brotherhood in Sudan. Since this movement the Muslim Brotherhood had a safe haven in Sudan historically. Do you see any connection here?
Certainly. Iran looks for partners who are seeking to overthrow an existing government. These partners need to have a couple of characteristics. They need to have an interest in violence to achieve their aims. They also need to have an interest in pushing away other parties and other aspects of democracy. And the old joke about the Muslim Brotherhood is it supports democracy, but one vote, one man, one time. And after that, no more democracy, and it keeps power for its own purposes. The people in the region, many of the Gulf Arabs say eventually that leads to extremism, such as Hamas and eventually ISIS.
In your opinion, do you see or do you think that Al-Burhan is like a proxy of Muslim Brotherhood? Is he a Muslim Brotherhood tool in a military suit? How do you describe the fight inside Sudan?
I think General Burhan is looking for partners and allies to sustain him in his very difficult challenge against the rapid support forces under Hemedti. And he may not be an actual puppet or tool of the Muslim Brotherhood or others, but he will take their support. And that will bring consequences, perhaps consequences that he himself does not yet understand.
Yeah, Mr. Roule, do you think that the international community has to act and focus more on the dangerous plan of Iran inside Sudan? What we should do, what the national international community should do, what the Biden administration should do about that?
Well, we have some history here and some successful history here. The United States and Great Britain worked with Gulf partners to pressure the Sudanese some years back not to acquire weapons from Iran. That process was successful. We also worked to convince Sudan to close the weapons smuggling teams that were going into Egypt and to close the terrorist camps. So we have a history of success if we work together. And as you stated, it requires working with Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, some Gulf partners, some European partners with a common approach saying this will not stand. And sanctioning and cutting air transport lines is a good way of reducing Iran's capability to deliver those weapons.
Okay, the rapid support forces accepted to go to dialogue, accepted a ceasefire, but the military is not accepting this development. So, how this fight can be solved?
It must have continued pressure from Sudan's neighbors, and particularly those who are supporting each actor. The Saudis have taken a diplomatic lead on this. They have brought together the parties in Jeddah. And importantly, this has provided humanitarian support for the millions of Sudanese who are displaced and in a terrible situation. So we are rightly focusing on the tragedy of Gaza, but we cannot overlook the tragedy of Sudan's civilian population. And we should applaud those who are working this. We must continue that pressure. And I think this is an African issue where we have to make sure that these parties all continue to say to General Burhan and others that they must go to a neutral environment and work this out and not bring in other actors such as Iran.
Do you think that the path of an accord between Sudan and Israel still exists, or when we have now bloodshed and Iran is interfering, so all these kind of negotiation discussions are off?
I think that the idea of broader relationships between Israel and other countries is on hold. How long it's on hold is unpredictable. However, if you are serious about regional economic integration, you can't ignore Israel simply because of the geography. This is a map issue. And Sudan has the opportunity for tremendous economic benefits if it takes a larger role in the East Mediterranean gas collective. The Saudis and Gulf Arabs have a terrific capacity to support their engagement with Europe. This will happen. But when, I think it's quite a ways off, and it's impossible to say when this will happen.
Thank you, Norman Roule, for your interview, for your time, and for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Maria Malouf here. Please click to like and subscribe to Maria Malouf TV YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.